Okay. So for your tile project, let's remember, you have your choice board. You get to pick on here which project you want to build. We're going for tiles this time. Your options are, you can choose a nature-based tile, so a deer in the background. I have some examples to show you. Flowers, animals, anything nature-based really is fair game here. A recreation, so go out and find a famous work of art or something that someone else has already done and you're going to recreate it or copy it. Remember, if you're doing something like this, you do need to put your own creative spin on it. That could be flip-flopping colors, maybe changing some small details about it. Those choices are yours, and we can talk about that when we have our little conference. A relief sculpture is something that is made in relief, so you start with a thick piece and kind of reveal the image as you go. You can choose to make a game board, just a straight up decorative tile, or if you're struggling, you can just choose to focus on texture. So once you've selected your type of tile that you're going to make, your theme, what we're calling it, then the next thing would be to either get a piece of paper or go on your computer and start looking for some imagery, some things that you're going to pull inspiration from. So for my nature tile, let's say I'm gonna do a fish. So I might be looking at pictures of different fish. What type of environment is it in? Am I gonna give this tile a background? Is my fish attached with maybe some coral and greenery at the bottom, or is the fish itself the tile? Let's say I want to explore both options, come up with pictures. You're going to have, your 5 sketches or imagery to work from, and then we're going to talk about that. So we'll talk about those small moments when we're conferencing. Okay, then to get started, let's look at some examples. Here are some little koi fish on a lily pad with some greenery and some bubbles in the background. Some things I want to point out: this edge isn't exactly the neatest, a little underglazed in the background, but overall design-wise, they fill the space, and the extra space they've put in some bubbles so it feels complete. It was a good choice to do koi fish along with a lily pad. They generally are in the same pond areas. I like the color choices. Again, just some small moments that could be improved upon. I love the concept of thinking outside the box with the overall shape of your tile. Just because it's a tile doesn't mean it needs to be circular or rectangular. The requirements are going to be that it needs to be added onto and carved into. Those carving moments can be small, like down here in the center of the sunflower, or even just that little ridge that you see going down the middle of the leaf. These next couple are going to be more like a relief sculpture, where you would start with a nice thick piece of clay, kind of chunk in your layers, and then you're going to kind of carve them away as you go. Something like this, one thing you do need to consider is on the back, where it's really thick, you might need to poke some relief holes just so that that extra air has a chance to escape. Another one, also a relief sculpture. You can kind of see the physical steps that happen. This is just a landscape, so this would be, again, nature-based. I was talking about the fish becoming the shape of the tile. This is kind of an example of that sort of thing. Another relief sculpture, so again, it has those physical steps, those physical changes. Just a turkey in the background is just some mountains and a sunset. Pay attention to detail. There's a lot of fine line work in here, and when I run my hand over the surface, I'm not feeling any of those sharp burrs. This person did a really good job of cleaning up any of that muckiness that happens from adding texture on the surface. One last one. Another koi fish, lots of carved detail in the background, fully using the tile. Again, it's not necessarily square. There's kind of a droopy corner. If that were me, the last thing I would do is go around and neaten my edges, make sure things like that are tidied up. You're in an advanced class now, so those things are where you're going to start losing those small points. Okay, overall concept. How do I build this? How do I go about it? First, we're gonna cut some clay. So, cut a chunk. Every time I make something, I need to wedge it. So I'm gonna, two-step process. Heel of my hand, I'm gonna push. And I'm gonna use my fingers to rotate back towards me so that I am wedging the entire piece of clay, not just one spot. I prefer to stand when I wedge. So I rotate, reset, push, rotate, reset, push. I probably will wedge, gosh, I don't know, 20 to 30 times per project. And I know that's kind of my sweet spot. We have practice, so you should have a good idea of how much wedging you need to do. Since I'm rolling something flat, I would spend a lot of time rolling this out if I just left it this way. So I like to kind of help it get started, give it a little squeeze, flatten it down a little before I start rolling. When you roll, you need to be on a surface that's separate from your table. Your table is smooth, your clay will stick if you roll directly on it. So you need a barrier. I just use a plastic bag in a pinch. Remember, we like to use wooden dowels. Make sure you grab two that are the same size. This will make sure that your slab is even thickness because that will show. This step depends on which style you're using. For example, if you're gonna do a relief sculpture, this is probably a moot point, but. Next, roll. I never use the handles. I always just leave my hands flat. Oops, it's all wet, slippery. I always just leave my hands flat on a rolling pin. Your clay is going to grow in the direction that you roll. So if this isn't wide enough for me, then I need to rotate my clay and roll a different direction. But for what I'm gonna do, this is just fine. You'll notice my clay again is growing in the direction that I'm rolling. So, once I have my tile rolled out, the next step is gonna be to cut it. I'm just gonna cut it roughly right now to get rid of some of this extra that's not rolled flat and set it aside. Cover up my bag because I don't want my clay to dry out. I now have a even thickness to work with. It peeled off my bag really nicely. I'm gonna work over here. All right, so let's say I am going to do a fish. I would probably draw that out first. So drawing out the shape of my fish. Again, you're working from your photos, so you have a little bit of reference. I'm gonna do kind of like a wispy angelfish. Cut that out. I always draw first and then commit to cutting it out, because if I make a mistake, I can just grab a rib really quick and get rid of my lines. So I have my fish drawn. I am committed to him. I'm gonna cut him out. And then I need to start asking myself, what does a fish need to look like a fish? Probably needs some scales. Does it need fins added, or have what I drawn in the clay, is that sufficient? Oops, didn't cut that line. So then I have my fish shape all cut out. Now it's a matter of doing all those decorating moments, giving it scales, which might come from the back side of one of these guys, or maybe I'm gonna use a cookie cutter. Oops. So if I use a cookie cutter, I can kind of repetitively just overlap by half and get a fun, clean up a little bit of the extra, the ones that overlap each other, and get a nice fish scale. I need an eye. Is that eye drawn on? Is it carved in? Again, all creative choices you're gonna have to make. but you do need to include both. You have to have something added and something carved in. So just as a refresher, if I'm going to attach this and make it my eye, which way do you go, fish? I think you go this way. Then I would need to slip and score. So slip, clay with a lot of water in it, scoring tool, forks work great, but if you're working smaller, then I would either grab a pin tool or one of my double-sided knives. When you slip and score, you need to score both surfaces, what I'm attaching and where I'm attaching it to. So I've scored both parts there, back side of my eye and where I plan to attach it. I'm gonna put some slip in between. Stick it on, and then don't forget the cleanup. I always clean up or neaten as I go. So I am going to take a wet paintbrush, a little bowl of water, go around and clean up around my eye where I have extra slip. Maybe I have some, I do have some little extra lines here that my scales, where I overlapped my tool and I don't like those, so I'm gonna go back and get rid of them. The overall surface of my clay, I want it to be smooth. I'm gonna run my finger over it. Probably should have done that before adding my textures, but if I'm finished, I'm paying attention to this outside edge, making it neat, going back through, making sure all my line work is clean and clear. I don't know what a fish mouth looks like. See, I would need to look that up. That's probably okay. Maybe I have some line work on my tail. If you don't like something, get rid of it. And I would continue my fish scales all the way through. So overall concept is that you're probably rolling out a flat piece of clay. At some point you need to add on to it and carve into it. Again, you have choices in the theme of your project. If you struggle with your idea, just come visit with me. We can either roll the dice or talk through it together. Tiles.